All right, so you wanted to know more about what the Palo Alto City Council gets up to. Well, buckle up because we're diving headfirst into their February 2024 meeting minutes.
We're going beyond the headlines, folks.
Yeah, forget just knowing what decisions they made. We're talking about uncovering the why, the how, and maybe even a little of the who said what.
These minutes are a goldmine of insight into the personalities and the priorities shaping Palo Alto's future.
And let me tell you, there's some juicy stuff in here. Big money decisions, state mandates making waves, even whispers of global conflicts echoing in City Hall. Ready to see how the sausage gets made.
Let's start with the topic that's always on everyone's mind, shall we? Money. Specifically, those big-ticket infrastructure projects that always seem to spark debate.
Oh yeah, right out the gate, the new public safety building caught my eye.
And with good reason, it seems to have gone a tad over budget.
Tad being a bit of an understatement, maybe.
It's true. We're looking at nearly $10 million over their initial projections.
Oof, that's gotta hurt. Someone's getting grilled about this, right?
You bet.
Yeah.
Councilmember Tanaka, our resident champion of fiscal responsibility, had something to say about this.
Let me guess, he's all about pinching pennies and dotting those IS.
That's one way to put it. He really honed in on that cost overrun, demanding a closer look at how the project was being managed. You can practically hear him in the minutes, urging for stricter oversight going forward.
Always good to have someone keeping a close eye on the budget.
He even went so far as to suggest exploring alternative solutions.
Like what? Cheaper building materials? A slightly used fire truck?
Not quite. He was thinking more along the lines of finding different approaches that might offer similar functionality, but without the hefty price tag.
Makes you wonder if those initial cost projections were, how do you say, a tad optimistic?
That's a question for another deep dive, perhaps.
But seriously, though, what does this mean for other projects down the line? If they're already this far over budget on the public safety building, are other things going to get put on hold?
You're hitting on a critical point. And this leads us to another major infrastructure project they were grappling with, the electric grid upgrade.
Oh yeah, I read about that. That's not just a minor renovation, is it?
Not at all. We're talking a cool $300 million.
Okay, that's a whole lot of zeros. What's the justification for spending that much on the electric grid?
Well, it boils down to two main arguments: reliability and sustainability.
Keep the lights on and save the planet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The current grid's getting old, and proponents of the upgrade argue it's essential to prevent future outages. Plus, they say it's crucial to achieving those ambitious climate goals Palo Alto has set.
So it's about making sure the city can handle its growing energy needs while also going green. But $300 million is a lot to swallow.
Oh, there were definitely some tough choices on the table.
Oh.
And you can practically feel the tension between these two perspectives in the meeting minutes.
So who's playing tug of war this time?
Councilmember Tanaka, ever the pragmatist, urged caution. He's all for a phased approach. Make sure they really need to spend that much before they commit.
Which makes sense, especially in a place like Palo Alto where every penny counts. But I'm sure there are others who are all about going green, even if it costs a pretty penny.
You're right. Councilmember Burt really emerged as a strong advocate for that full-scale grid upgrade, arguing that putting it off will only lead to higher costs down the line, both financially and environmentally.
A classic clash of priorities, balancing those immediate needs with long-term vision. And it's not just playing out with money either. These minutes really show how state-level mandates are adding another layer of complexity.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no better example of that than the ongoing saga of SB 9. That state law meant to address the housing crisis.
Ah, yes, SB 9. For those of us who don't speak fluent California housing policy, what exactly does that entail?
To put it simply, it lets homeowners build more units on their property, essentially increasing density in areas that have traditionally been single-family homes. It's caused quite a stir all over the state, and these minutes show it's no different in Palo Alto.
So, how are residents reacting? Are we talking pitchforks and torches?
Not quite that dramatic. But there's definitely a lot of healthy debate around SB 9. One of the big sticking points is resident notification.
Yeah, I can imagine. Finding out your neighbor is suddenly your new landlord might ruffle a few feathers. What's the debate there? How much notification is enough?
That is the million-dollar question. And it's clear the council was wrestling with it. Some residents were pushing for way more transparency, demanding more advance notice about any proposed SB9 projects in their neighborhoods.
Which makes sense. Getting a heads up after construction's already begun isn't ideal. But I'm guessing there's a counter-argument to this.
Definitely. Some council members, and especially those who are in favor of increasing housing density, argue that having too many notification requirements could slow the whole process down.
Making it harder to actually build new housing.
Exactly. And that kind of defeats the purpose of the law in the first place.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between keeping residents in the loop and not creating unnecessary roadblocks. Talk about walking a tightrope.
Speaking of tightropes, these minutes also highlight another area where the council is trying to balance competing priorities, all-electric building codes.
Ah, yes, the quest for a gas-free future. Didn't Berkeley run into some legal trouble over their push for all-electric? Did that have any impact on Palo Alto?
Big time. That court ruling against Berkeley's code really threw a wrench in the works. Cities like Palo Alto, who are all gung-ho about going all-electric, they had to hit the brakes.
Understandably so. You don't want to end up in court yourself.
Exactly. And you see that hesitation reflected in these minutes. They want to make sure whatever code they implement is going to hold up legally.
So it's a balancing act between their environmental goals and, well, not wanting to get sued.
You got it. And it really speaks to this larger theme that keeps popping up.
Which is?
The struggle to maintain local control while navigating all these state mandates and legal precedents. It's a tightrope walk for sure.
Makes you realize there's a lot more to local politics than meets the eye. Speaking of which, did you find it interesting how even global events can spark debate at the local level?
You're talking about the conflict in Gaza.
Exactly. Even amidst budget talks and zoning discussions, something happening halfway across the world found its way into the conversation.
It's true. The situation in Gaza led to a very, let's say, lively public comment period.
I bet. Was it a case of Palo Alto solve world peace?
Some residents definitely urged the council to make some kind of statement. Condemning the violence, calling for a ceasefire, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. But I'm guessing not everyone was on board with that?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
Others felt very strongly that the council should stay in their lane.
Focus on Palo Alto issues.
Exactly. Why get involved in such a complex geopolitical situation, right?
So it's that classic dilemma. Do you speak out against injustice, even if it's happening far away? Or do you stay focused on your own backyard?
It's a tough one. And you see this internal struggle reflected in the council members, too.
Mm.
Some express solidarity with those suffering, but they also voice concerns about overstepping boundaries.
Not to mention potentially creating even more division within the community.
Precisely. And that's what I find so fascinating about these minutes. They reveal that these aren't just theoretical policy debates. They're directly influenced by what's happening in the world and how people are feeling.
It's a good reminder that even in a place like Palo Alto, known for its tech and innovation, it's often the human element that really drives things. And speaking of human elements, I felt like these minutes gave us a little glimpse into the personalities and the dynamics at play within the council itself.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to observe how each council member approaches their role, what issues they're passionate about, even where they butt heads with each other.
So who are some of the key players in this civic drama?
Well, we've already talked about Councilmember Tanaka and his focus on fiscal responsibility.
Mr. Every dollar has to have a purpose.
Exactly. He's the voice of caution, always making sure they're thinking about the budgetary impact of their decisions.
The guardian of the city's checkbook. I like it. Who else stands out?
Well, on the other side of the spectrum, you have Councilmember Burt. He emerged as this passionate advocate for climate action and long-term sustainability.
So a bit more of a visionary.
I'd say so. He's not afraid to push for bolder solutions, even if they might cost more upfront.
Always good to have a mix of perspectives. What about Councilmember Koo? What kind of role did she play in all of this?
She struck me as a very strong advocate for resident engagement and transparency.
Making sure people feel heard, especially on issues like SB9 that directly impact their neighborhoods.
Absolutely. She really emphasized the need for clear communication and making sure residents have a chance to voice their concerns.
Because at the end of the day, these decisions affect real people's lives.
Exactly. And this really highlights that tension that often comes up in local government.
Which is,
How do you balance efficiency with participation?
you want things to run smoothly, but you also want to make sure everyone has a seat at the table. How did that play out in these minutes?
Well, there were a few interesting examples. One that comes to mind is the discussion about Palo Alto's Friendship Cities program.
Now, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely up to speed on my international diplomacy protocols. Friendship cities, that's like sister cities, but a little less formal.
You could say that. It's more about building relationships with cities around the world,
Hmm,
cultural exchange, that sort of thing.
sounds lovely. Who could object to a little international friendship?
You'd be surprised. Council member Tanaka, ever the pragmatist, had some reservations about expanding the program.
Even Mr. Make New Friends himself, what was the issue?
He was mainly concerned about the financial implications. Even small expenses add up, and he felt it was important to prioritize essential services.
That's fair. But I'm sure other council members saw the value in nurturing these global relationships.
Exactly. Councilmember Burt spoke passionately about the intangible benefits: goodwill, cultural understanding, maybe even some economic opportunities down the line.
There's that clash of perspectives again, the pragmatist versus the idealist. So who came out on top? Did Palo Alto expand its circle of friends?
Let's just say that Palo Alto is ready to spread its wings and make some new friends. The council ultimately voted to expand the program.
Good for them. Proof that even amidst the serious stuff, there's room for a little international camaraderie.
Absolutely. But as fascinating as it is to dissect all of these personalities and their
Oh,
dynamics,
I know. It's like a little political soap opera sometime.
right. But what really matters is how these decisions affect the everyday lives of Palo Alto residents. So as we wrap up our deep dive into these meeting minutes, what are your takeaways? What really stood out to you?
Because these aren't just abstract debates, right?
Not at all. These decisions have real-world consequences.
Whether it's how much you're paying for your electricity,
The availability of affordable housing.
even the future of your favorite park.
Ah.
It all boils down to these decisions made in City Hall.
And remember, this is just a glimpse.
A tiny peek behind the curtain.
1 month out of an entire year in the life of your city council.
So, what got you thinking? What do you want to explore further?
Maybe this whole SB9 thing piqued your interest in housing policy. Or perhaps Councilmember Tanaka's concerns about the electric grid upgrade have you wondering about alternative energy solutions.
Whatever it is, these minutes are just the starting point.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of local government, isn't it?
It's accessible.
You can attend the meetings, follow the issues, make your voice heard.
Because at the end of the day, it's your city. These decisions affect all of
So
us.
stay curious, folks. Stay engaged. And hey, who knows?
Maybe we'll see you at the next city council meeting.
Until then, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
And remember, the journey to being a well-informed citizen is an ongoing adventure.